May 5, 2009, Columbia, Illinois. At 6:50 in the morning, a man calls 911. His name is Chris Coleman. He is 32 years old. He is the head of security for one of the largest Christian ministries in the world. He tells the dispatcher that he left for the gym early that morning, and now his wife and 2 sons are not answering the phone. He sounds worried, urgent, like a husband and father who knows something is wrong. Police arrive at the Coleman home on Robert Drive, a quiet suburban street in Columbia, a town just outside St. Louis. They notice a basement window is slightly open. They enter the house, and immediately they see something disturbing. Words spray-painted on the walls in red. Punished. I am always watching. You have paid. It looks like the work of a stalker, a madman, someone who has been threatening this family for months. The officers move upstairs. In the bedrooms, they find 3 bodies. Sheri Coleman, 31, the wife, Garett Coleman, 11, the older son, Gavin Coleman, 9, the younger son, who just celebrated his birthday 5 days earlier. All 3 have been strangled in their beds. When Chris Coleman arrives home, an officer tells him, "Chris, they didn't make it." Chris sits down on the garage floor. He cries. He calls his father. The community is in shock. A mother and 2 young boys murdered in their sleep. But within days, investigators begin to see something else. This is not the work of a stalker. This is the work of someone much closer to home. This is the story of the Coleman family murders. A man who killed his wife and 2 sons to protect his job, his reputation, and his secret affair. Columbia, Illinois, is a small suburban town just across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, Missouri. In 2009, it has a population of around 10,000 people. It is the kind of place where everyone knows their neighbors, where kids ride bikes in the street and families gather at church on Sundays. The crime rate is low. The schools are good. Young families move here specifically because it feels safe. In 2009, the Coleman family lives on Robert Drive, in a subdivision called Columbia Lakes. Their house is comfortable, well-maintained, typical of middle-class suburban America. From the outside, they look like the ideal family. Chris Coleman, 32, is the head of security for Joyce Meyer Ministries, one of the largest and most influential Christian organizations in the world. Joyce Meyer is a televangelist with a global reach, millions of followers, a massive media empire, books, conferences, television broadcasts. Chris's job is to protect her, to manage security at events, travel with her, ensure her safety. It is high-profile work, well compensated, prestigious. Chris is also the son of Reverend Ronald Coleman, a respected minister in the Christian community. His wife, Sheri Coleman, is 31 years old. She is a devoted mother, active in her church, and deeply loved by friends and family. She homeschools the boys. She volunteers. She is warm, kind, always willing to help others. They have 2 sons. Garett, 11, is smart, funny, full of life. He loves sports, video games, and hanging out with his younger brother. Gavin, 9, just had his birthday 5 days ago. He is playful, energetic, always laughing. He adores his mother and idolizes his older brother. To neighbors, co-workers, and church members, the Colemans are a model family. Chris is friendly, polite, professional. Sheri is loving and engaged. The boys are polite and well-behaved. But behind closed doors, cracks are forming. The marriage is not what it appears to be. Chris Coleman presents himself as a devoted Christian, a family man, a protector. But there is another side to Chris that very few people see. He is controlling, he is secretive, and he is deeply unhappy in his marriage. Friends of Sheri later say that she confided in them about problems at home. Chris is emotionally distant. He is critical. He makes her feel small. But Sheri believes in her marriage. She believes in her vows. She wants to make it work. Chris, on the other hand, has already decided that the marriage is over. But he cannot just leave. Divorce is not an option for someone in his position. Joyce Meyer Ministries is a deeply Christian organization. It places enormous value on family, faith, and moral conduct. If Chris divorces Sheri, he will lose his job. and his job is everything to him. It is his identity, his income, his status. So Chris starts looking for another way out. Sometime before 2009, Chris Coleman begins an affair. Her name is Tara Lintz, and she is not just any woman. She is someone the family knows, a friend. The affair is passionate, secretive, and intense. Chris and Tara exchange messages. They meet in secret. They talk about a future together. Chris tells Tara that he loves her, that he wants to be with her, that he is going to leave Sheri. But there is a problem. If Chris divorces Sheri, he will lose his job at Joyce Meyer Ministries. And if he loses his job, he loses everything. So Chris is stuck. He wants to be with Tara, but he cannot afford to divorce Sheri. He wants his family gone. But he cannot simply walk away. And then, an idea begins to form. What if there was no divorce? What if Sheri and the boys were simply gone? What if someone else was blamed? In November 2008, 6 months before the murders, the Coleman family begins receiving strange messages, emails, letters, threats. The messages say that the family will be destroyed. Some of them mention Joyce Meyer, Chris's employer. The tone is dark, menacing, obsessive. At first, Sheri is confused. Who would send these? Chris tells her not to worry. He says he will handle it. He reports the threats to the police. He says someone is stalking his family. He does not know who, but the threats are getting worse. The police investigate, but they cannot find the person sending the messages. Chris installs security cameras around the house. He tells friends and co-workers about the threats. He shows them the emails. He says he is scared for his family. Everyone believes him. Why wouldn't they? Sheri begins to feel unsafe. She worries about the boys. She trusts that Chris is doing everything he can to protect them. What she does not know is that the threats are not coming from a stranger. They are coming from Chris himself. He is sending the emails from his own laptop. He is creating the narrative of a dangerous stalker, a person obsessed with the family, someone who might hurt them. Over the course of 6 months, Chris builds the perfect cover story. When the murders happen, everyone will assume it was the stalker. Chris will be the grieving husband and father, the man who tried to protect his family but could not, and no one will suspect him. May 4th, 2009, the day before the murders. It is a normal Monday evening at the Coleman house. The weather is warm. Spring is in full bloom in Columbia. Chris, Garett, and Gavin are outside in the front yard playing catch. The security camera at the front door captures the scene. Chris throws the ball. Garett catches it and tosses it to Gavin. They are laughing, joking, enjoying the evening. To anyone watching, it looks like a loving father spending time with his sons. It is the last time Garett and Gavin will be seen alive. That night, the family goes to bed. Sheri sleeps in the master bedroom. Garett and Gavin are in their own rooms, just down the hall. Chris is awake. He has made his decision. Tonight is the night. Sometime in the early morning hours of May 5th, while his wife and sons are sleeping, Chris makes his move. Chris Coleman walks into the bedrooms where his family is sleeping. One by one, he strangles them. Sheri, Garett, Gavin. All three are killed with ligatures around their necks. They die in their beds. There is no sign of struggle, no indication that they fought back. They trusted him. They never saw it coming. After the murders, Chris takes a can of red spray paint and begins writing on the walls. Punished. I am always watching. You have paid. He writes an offensive word on the master bedroom wall. He spray paints the same word on the sheet covering Gavin's small body. It is meant to look like the work of a psychopath, like the threats that have been building for months. Chris stages the basement window, leaving it slightly open to make it look like someone broke in. Then, he calmly leaves the house. He gets in his car and drives away. His wife and 2 sons are dead, and he is about to put on the performance of his life. May 5th, 2009. Around 5:43 a.m., Chris Coleman leaves the house, supposedly heading to the gym, but he does not take the direct route. Instead, he drives a longer, more complicated path. GPS later shows that he deliberately took extra time. He is building an alibi. At 6:50 a.m., Chris calls the police. He says he has been trying to reach Sheri and the boys all morning, but no one is answering. He sounds concerned, worried, like a husband who fears something is wrong. Officers are dispatched to the house on Robert Drive. They arrive before Chris does. When they approach the house, they notice the basement window is slightly open. They enter cautiously. They see the spray-painted messages on the walls, and then they go upstairs. Sheri is in the master bedroom, lying in bed dead. Garett is in his room, dead. Gavin is in his room, partially covered by a sheet, dead. All three have been strangled. When Chris arrives, an officer stops him outside and tells him, "Chris, they didn't make it." Chris's reaction is immediate. He sits down on the garage floor. He cries. He calls his father, Reverend Ronald Coleman. At that moment, it looks like a tragedy. A family targeted by a madman. A husband and father left devastated. But the investigation is just beginning. Within hours, detectives start piecing together the crime scene. They examine the spray-painted messages. They look at the basement window. They review the security footage. And quickly, things start to feel wrong. The basement window looks staged. The spray paint on the walls is too deliberate, too theatrical. And the threatening emails, when forensic analysts examine them, come from Chris Coleman's own laptop. Then, the autopsy results come back. The medical examiner determines that Sheri, Garett, and Gavin were killed before Chris left for the gym. Chris said he left around 5:43 a.m., but his family was already dead by then. That means Chris did not discover the bodies. He already knew they were dead when he called 911. Detectives also discover the affair. Chris has been involved with Tara Lintz, a woman who knows the family. They find messages between Chris and Tara. Messages about their future together. About how Chris is going to leave Sheri. Friends of Sheri come forward. They say Sheri confided in them about problems in the marriage. One of them says Sheri told her, months before the murders, "If something happens to me, Chris is responsible." That statement is chilling. It suggests that Sheri knew she was in danger. On May 19th, 2009, 2 weeks after the murders, Chris Coleman is arrested. He is charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. The evidence is overwhelming. The threatening emails came from his laptop. The timeline proves the family was killed before he left the house. The GPS shows he took a deliberately longer route to create an alibi. The affair with Tara Lintz gives him a motive. The spray-painted messages were staged to look like a stalker. Chris denies everything. He says his laptop was hacked. He insists he is innocent. His family, his father, Reverend Ronald Coleman, stands by him. But the prosecution has a clear narrative. Chris Coleman wanted to be with Tara Lintz, but he could not divorce Sheri without losing his job at Joyce Meyer Ministries. So he killed his wife and 2 sons and tried to make it look like the work of a stalker. The trial begins in April 2011, nearly 2 years after the murders. It takes place in Waterloo, Illinois. The jury is made up of 10 women and 2 men. The courtroom is packed. Sheri's family is there. Chris's family is there. The media is there. The prosecution lays out the case methodically. The threatening emails were sent from Chris's laptop. The autopsies show the family was killed before Chris left for the gym. The GPS data proves Chris took an unnecessarily long route. The affair with Tara Lintz provides the motive. The spray-painted messages were a clumsy attempt to stage a crime scene. The defense argues that Chris is innocent, that someone else must have done this, that the laptop could have been hacked. But the evidence is overwhelming. Friends testify about Sheri's fears, about her saying that if something happened to her, Chris would be responsible. The jury hears about the affair, about Chris's desire to leave his family but not lose his job. They see the security footage of Chris playing with Garett and Gavin the night before he killed them. They hear about the spray paint, the staged window, the fake emails. On May 5, 2011, exactly 2 years after the murders, the jury reaches a verdict. After 14 hours of deliberation over 2 days, they announce guilty on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. Chris Coleman shows no emotion. He looks down. He exhales. Sheri's family cries. Someone in the courtroom yells, "We got him!" Outside the courthouse, about 150 people have gathered. When Chris is led away in handcuffs, they applaud. The prosecution seeks the death penalty, but Chris chooses to have the judge, rather than the jury, decide his sentence. In the end, the judge sentences Chris Coleman to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Even if the jury had chosen death, it would not have mattered. In March 2011, just weeks before the verdict, the governor of Illinois abolished the death penalty. Chris Coleman will spend the rest of his life in prison. He files multiple appeals over the years. All of them are denied. Sheri's family files a wrongful death lawsuit against Chris Coleman and Joyce Meyer Ministries. The case is covered extensively by the media, including a CBS 48 Hours episode titled "The Writing on the Wall." The community of Columbia, Illinois, is devastated. On the one-year anniversary of the murders, the community gathers to remember Sheri, Garett, and Gavin. May 5, 2009. A 31-year-old woman and her 2 young sons went to sleep. They never woke up. Sheri Coleman, 31, Garett Coleman, 11, Gavin Coleman, 9. They were strangled in their beds by the one person who was supposed to protect them, their husband, their father. Chris Coleman staged the scene to look like the work of a stalker. He spray-painted threats on the walls. He sent himself fake emails for months. He opened a basement window to make it look like a break-in, but the truth came out. He killed his family because he wanted to be with another woman, because he could not afford to lose his job, because to him, starting over was easier than facing the consequences of his choices. On May 5, 2011, exactly 2 years after the murders, Chris Coleman was found guilty. He is serving life in prison without parole. He will never be free. But Sheri, Garett, and Gavin will never come back. This is the story of the Coleman family murders. A man who chose murder over honesty, control over compassion, and his own desires over the lives of his wife and sons.